A consequential vote could eliminate the school district's longstanding commitments to diverse, representative, and non discriminatory policies. Here to talk about it is Yasmina White, Duval County Public School parent and public school advocate. Good morning, Yasmina.
Hi, good morning.
We're also joined by Warren Jones, former City Council president and former Duval County School Board chair. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. We're also joined by Geanny Joseph Ruiz, a senior manager of Safe and Healthy Schools from Equality, Florida. She's joining us via video. Good morning, Geanny.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Warren, I would like to start with you if I could. First of all, for the current policy, I'm curious if the current kind of language of DEI in school board policy is something you were involved in drafting. And also, I just wonder if you could kind of remind us a little bit about how we got to this point in Duval County when it comes to, um, including language, DEI language in policy, sort of versus where we came from.
Okay, thank you. No, I was not a part of drafting the language, but I know that historically there have been efforts to make sure, that diversity, equity, inclusion is a part of our everyday work at the school board. Uh, Language speaks to the policy of how we operate to make sure that we include everyone, that every student is not at the same level. So you have to have equity to make sure that you bring those students who are struggling up to the level they need to be. Uh, and I think that policy generates from years of efforts to make sure that we include everyone. There's always been pushback. Historically, affirmative action was the thing, and there was a lot of pushback on that. Uh, when schools went to integrate, of course, the Duval County School Board pushed to build new schools. They built Raines and Eugene Butler to keep from integrating. So there's always been that pushback, and I think we're at a point today where we see there's a pushback to DEI, um, the policy of DEI. But I think the reality is that we are a diverse community, and we don't need to shy away from that. And I hate to see the school board or any other entity push back against the efforts to make sure that we include everybody. Because when the message is given by a diverse group, I think it's more acceptable than if this is one-sided. You look at the trials back in the 60s and 70s when it was all white jury convicted someone of color. People didn't accept that verdict. But when it's integrated, it's diverse, then the acceptance of whatever verdict is reached is more acceptable. And I think those issues resonate with a lot of people on the school board.
And I'm curious, how Duval in particular compares in terms of, the need for policies like this. I mean, the desegregation of public schools, was basically the law of the nation from 1954. But in Duval County, it took many, many years for a real serious effort to desegregate began, and
Hmm.
it was court ordered, in
Right.
fact,
That's correct.
and really didn't kind of start until a lawsuit was brought in 1971. And so there was, many years where it was still de facto desegregation, and then, years of the court kind of enforcing things like busing, building new schools, and tearing down some schools. So can you just tell me, do you view DEI policy in a different light just because Duval's history is so fraught when it comes to things like integration?
Yeah, I have a different perspective than most people because I grew up in a segregated school system, um, and so there were some advantages to that because we had teachers who taught uh, issues of race and the impact it had on our lives, but it also told us that we could be whatever we wanted to be. Having now a position where your teachers are prohibited from talking about certain things in the classroom. And if a teacher does that, then they could be suspended or removed from their job. So I think it's important that we understand that we are in a diverse community and we need not shy away from that. We need to promote it as we should. And I think that looking back on those efforts to deny integration uh, says as a community we need to promote it more because we had to go through a lot to get to where we are today. Uh, Lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit pushback after pushback, and here we are today in 2025, where now there's a effort to retreat from that message of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I hope that the school board does not do that. I know that they're concerned about funding. If you don't uh, change that policy, then will you lose funding? That hasn't happened yet. So why? And unlike other communities, Jacksonville had always has had a large black population, and so unlike other counties in the state of Florida, we need to be promoting that diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I want to ask you, Yasmina, as a parent. I mean, the reason that we're talking about this today is because there was this lengthy discussion about school board policy at a recent workshop, essentially, that the school board had in late May. And now there are a couple of meetings coming up. As a parent of two students, one is about to enter this Duval County Public Schools, one who is in for a number of years now. Um, can you talk to us a little bit about why you personally are involved in this issue, why you're speaking to the school board about diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So, being involved in public schools is a passion of mine. Being a graduate of Duval County Public Schools is important to me. And furthering that legacy through my kids is important to me. Our public schools are amazing schools, and I want the district and school board members to know that. We have a majority Republican um, school board supporters, board members, and they are backed by Moms for Liberty, and they do not support DEI. They do not support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want other parents to understand the makeup of our school board and how they impact policy and how they impact what our students are impacted by on a daily basis. I think people don't realize the importance of our school board members. They are just as important as our city council members, our mayor, our governor, our president. And at the federal level, they are being emboldened right now to criminalize diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's not fair. And to Warren's point, to how we've gotten here and why we've gotten here in the Deep South, it is important that parents realize and understand what is happening on the school level, at the district level, at the school board level, in all areas.
Jeannie, I want to bring you into the conversation. I mean, we should say that the school board is nominally nonpartisan, but we do know that there is a majority of members that are endorsed by or affiliated with Moms for Liberty, which of course has been a chief vocal opponent of DEI, and also behind a number of pushes to ban books from schools or remove books from school shelves. Um, why is this issue of importance to Equality Florida, and what is what is your organization doing on the local level, if anything, to make your voice heard?
Yeah, thank you. So to Yasmina's point, this is why the school board is so important in making critical decisions that will have lasting impacts on the entire community. So our organization, Equality Florida, does civil rights work here in Florida in a variety of ways. My specific area focuses on pushing back on bad policy in K through 12 school districts and supporting school districts to take accountability for ensuring that their kids can have a safe environment to learn in. And so, what we're seeing here throughout Florida is a reaction to both federal and state, just to be transparent, bullying, right? There is, what's interesting is there is no one specific law that one can point to validate what we are seeing happen in some of our school districts. What is taking place is an overcompliance that is rooted in fear. And so this is why, coming back to what I initially said, school board members and who you vote for in your school board member is so important, because this is a difference between a school board that is composed of members that care about its student body when they are put in a situation where they're being bullied by the state or the federal government and it's not rooted in any specific law. That school board would have the decency to stand up and push back and say, we are going to continue to protect and support our kids. And until you can point to one thing that we are doing that's breaking the law, we're going to continue to operate as usual, which is what the Duval School Board should be doing. They should be operating business as usual with the same policies intact that they've had to support their students. Instead, now you have board members like the ones from Moms for Liberty, who are from Moms for Liberty, now are emboldened to do what they've always wanted to do because they are in a political climate that is ripe for them to do it without consequence. Rather, they're in a political climate that encourages it. And so we see this type of overcompliance, overreaction. And so our job now in Equality Florida, Safe and Healthy Schools, is to build confidence. We are doing a whole lot of confidence building. We're watching these school board agendas like a hawk throughout the state and making sure when we see something like this come up that we can respond, we can reach out to board members, we can let them know that what they're doing is not rooted in law, but fear, and that they do not need to be doing this. We can explain to them why. We can also inform the community about what's taking place so that people know that this is happening and they know how they can show up and make their voice heard.
But Geanny, I want to ask you because I mean the policies that are being proposed to change, and we have a couple of pages that the people who are watching our live stream will be able to see that kind of show the wholesale strike throughs that are being proposed on some of these DEI policies. But these are being driven, according to the school board, in administration, Trump administration warnings and policies that basically have said schools could lose their federal funds, including grants intended for low income students, if they don't abandon DEI, saying that, in the belief, the administration believes that DEI programs violate civil rights law and that if schools are not compliant with removing what they're calling illegal DEI practices, that they will lose really, important federal funding. So why shouldn't school board members, Geanny, be reacting to this and being proactive?
Because this is rooted in the administration's attempt to reinterpret non-discrimination. And they've decided that DEI now constitutes as discrimination when we know that that is not correct. School districts every year apply for Title VI funding, and that's not that funding is based on the commitment that school districts make to making sure that they will not discriminate based on race, sex, gender, age, etc., etc. And so if a school district was signing on to receive Title VI funding and committing to the ideal that they will not discriminate based on these factors, if they were making that commitment year after year, what's different about this year is you have an administration that's come in and decided that, hey, your Title VI non-discrimination funding, DEI could cause you to lose that because you have an administration that believes that DEI now somehow constitutes as discrimination. So what is happening is based on the threats that are coming from this administration based on how it wants to interpret non-discrimination policies and federal funding that is based on non-discrimination. Since the Trump administration has come in and tried to enforce this upon school districts, we have seen several courts stand up and strike down and disagree with what the administration is trying to do. And so that is why we are telling our school districts to hold steady, stand firm, see how these things play out in the courts. Do not make preemptive decisions that will harm your students. This is not the time to cede ground. This is the time to stand firm in the policies that were created in the best interest of your students, your teachers, and your families.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about a proposal that would strip some DEI policies from the school district's governing policies. And if you'd like to join our conversation, you're welcome to. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email questions or comments to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on Facebook, and we do have some comments from Facebook. Katie saying, these policy decisions aren't about improving education, they're about turning back progress. That's why we're holding a rally before the July 1st Duval County School Board meeting, and we're calling on our community to show up 5:30 at 1701 Prudential Drive. We cannot sit by silently while DEI policies are being wiped off the books and the board prepares to form committees to handle an onslaught of book bans. Also, a message from Tiffany on Facebook. I am deeply disappointed in a few of our school board members. Some have continued to take equity out of its intended context and frame a narrative that disrespects our community, our entire community. Um, an email from Paul. The people who want to do away with DEI now never wanted to move towards equality and diversity in the first place. This is just a convenient time for them to retreat. I'd like to ask you about that, Warren Jones, because while you were school board chair and you served on the school board for a number of years, I think it's fair to say that the profile of the school board has changed a lot in the last handful of years. Can you sort of describe that evolution um, and why you think this current school board seems to be moving towards or away from policies of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
That's a very good question. The key, I think, is that Project 2025 clearly lays out an effort to dismantle public education. I think the road to freedom for so many people, those who are disenfranchised, those on the margins, has always been a free public education. When you can defund, reduce, or create charter schools and private school funding, then you can control the curriculum. And that curriculum may not include history of what has really gone on in America. It may be that slavery had benefits and what those benefits were. I mean, so you can control that. So if you can move students out of traditional public education that's free and open to anyone, then that allows you to control that curriculum and reduce the kind of outrage you saw during George Floyd with black and white and all kind of folks out protesting. That I think that struck a chord in some of those who want to turn back the clock on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they say, well, how could they be so enraged about what happened? Well, it's education. So how can we take that back? And I think overall, the school board and Moms for Liberty have been very effective in taking control of the DCPS school board. When I was elected in 2016, it was about what's good for students. And every board member that I served with at that time, we had our disagreements, don't get me wrong, but we were concerned with what was best for students. 2018 comes along and you have a governor and the Moms for Liberty now who wants to control every school board in the state of Florida. And you've seen board members attack Liz Anderson, the first one. She supported the mask mandate.
She's a former school board chair, Elizabeth Anderson. Yeah, right.
And we had people forget school opened in August of 2020. In the first month, the first 2 weeks of school, the state health department required that we close 2 schools because 40% of those students had contracted COVID virus. Dr. Green said, we got to do something. We got to save our students and we got to save our teachers. So we imposed a mask mandate. Out of the 12 counties who did that, 8 of those superintendents are now gone. And they made a concerted effort to remove people who did not follow the dictates from Tallahassee. And now you have a school board who signs that pledge that they will support initiatives and that agenda from Tallahassee. And that's what we have now. That's what we are fighting against today.
We have a kind of a comment from Susan on Facebook. She's saying there is value in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Eliminating equity will probably hurt our children with disabilities more than any other group. And I want to ask you about that, Yasmina, because we often think of diversity initiatives dealing with, race or ethnicity or perhaps gender or gender identity. But there are groups that fall under the I guess protections or the considerations of DEI that are disabled or perhaps veterans, people that kind of are have their own set of challenges that DEI aims to kind of focus on and address. So, what do you think people should be thinking about in the broader context when the board is having these conversations about changing these policies?
They need to be thinking about that it is not just about race. They need to be thinking about it has to do with gender, it has to do with LGBTQ, it has to do with our Hispanic population, our ESOL population, which is the English speaking only language students. It isn't just about race. When you're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, you're talking about everyone. You're talking about everyone that does not look like what our board looks like right now. You're talking about students of all nationalities, all ethnicities, all makeups in our school district. And I want people to know and realize that and understand that. And to be able to understand that, they need to get involved, they need to get engaged, whether that be with our SAC, PTA, getting a group of parents to come together, because these people are going to be the heart and soul of the success of our public schools and the success of our school district.
To your point, though, I wonder how will eliminating DEI impact the Individuals with Disability Education Act. I mean, we have students who are disabled, and we have to educate those students no matter what degree of disability they have. And we have two schools, Alden Road and Palm Avenue, who work with students, and those students can stay in the school system for today's age of 22. So we have to be concerned about the impact that would have on our students, to your point, with disabilities.
Some of the policies that are under consideration for removal here, I mean, I think we should just cite some. One of them is a goal that is currently in policy that, the school board, the school district aims to, quote, prohibit and correct intentional discrimination in any district program. Another says the goal is to balance curriculum to accurately reflect our demographics, and that the school district is committed to ensuring that equity and inclusion are essential principles of our school system. So those are all things that are up for discussion at this coming workshop and at the school board voting meeting on July 1st. So um, that's something that they're considering. But I know that some of the school board members have said, well, we like some of those things. I think particularly Miss Bolduck, Melody Bolduck, has said that she doesn't want to get rid of everything wholesale, but there are certain things that she does not like, and she described those as things that try to engineer outcomes. Um, and so, she was saying that if we're focused on things that try to affect an outcome, that would be problematic for her. Um, so one thing I think that was pointed out was something that would ensure, that matters are handled in an equitable and respectful manner, ensuring something happens as opposed to sort of indicating that it's a priority. Do you see a distinction there that's important?
So she mentioned that she didn't want it to be engineered, board member Bolduke. And while I respect her position, but it not being engineered is how we got segregation, is how we got um, black kids going to one set of schools and white kids going to another. Diversity, equity, inclusion policies are in place for a reason. They are in place to allow that equitable education, to allow that inclusivity. So I don't know how else we can capture diversity, equity, and inclusion without being intentional that that is what we're going to do in the school district. And I want to add that all of our staff, including down to the janitor and district staff, should look like the makeup of our school district. When I was in Duval County Public Schools, I had 1 to 2 Black teachers. I should have never gone 12 years without seeing someone who looked like me. Those experiences where students can connect to people who look like them is important. And for board member Duke to say that she doesn't care what race someone is, well, of course you don't care. You have people that look like you. I don't.
And one of the themes that we've learned in the school district is that you can't be what you can't see. And so for students to be able to see a teacher of that color, of their color, helps them say, well, I can do that. To see growing up in Jacksonville, up until 67, there were no black elected officials. Uh, Here I am, graduated in 69, and 10 years later, I'm on the city council. So I saw Sally Mathis, and I saw Mary Singleton, Earl Johnson, and others on the city council. So, I can do this. So I think that's very important that you're able to see people who look like you, so you can aspire to be what they are. Uh, to do away with DEI, I think is a mistake. I think it's something that the state and federal government is trying to bully districts to do nationwide, and we're still in the deep south, and we have those issues, and they're not going to go away overnight.
Geanny, I want to ask you, we partly because we got a note on Facebook about it saying that the board at this recent workshop spent, quote, an embarrassing amount of time trying to find another word for equity. And it's true, that was sort of a sticking point saying, well, we kind of agree with these ideas, but we have to avoid that word. We know that that's kind of a word that is going to attract attention, that's, one of those words in DEI that must be avoided. Can you just sort of address what is happening when the language itself is the problem and maybe not the concept?
Yeah, this is what happens when the wrong side steals the narrative, because there is such a negative connotation around DEI and what it means. And because people don't know what it means and they think that it's this negative thing, we have these outcomes. And unfortunately, DEI is what we need, especially right now. It literally translates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is about creating pathways. Yasmina and Warren made excellent points. When we say diversity, equity, and inclusion, we mean making sure that when we have a diverse group of students, that we are intentional about making sure that we are hiring faculty and staff who represent that diverse body, right? That's not excluding others, but that's being mindful of the decisions you make. Making sure that if you have students who are falling through the gaps, who are having issues, that you're being mindful of the different identities that those students have so that you can be intentional about providing the supports that those students need. We can't have a one size fits all approach to all of our students, because if we do that, then you will have students who fail because we fail to recognize what issues they are having either at home or in school. And so when we are in a place where we are now, where you have where people are having problems with the term or the word, I find that most of us do have similar values. It's just that the disconnect happens with the language. And if that's a problem, then I go into spaces now and I try to use the most simple language that folks can understand so that we can connect around values. You want to support our kids, right? You want to make sure all of our students are successful, right? Well, if you want that, this is what needs to happen. We need to be creating spaces where those students, all students, can come into a classroom and feel safe and feel seen. Otherwise, we will have large amounts of students failing because we are not creating supports with them in mind.
So, Warren, there is a meeting this Wednesday called an agenda committee meeting, which evidently does allow public comment so people could speak to the board on this issue if they care to. And then there's the July 1st board meeting where a vote of some kind is expected on this policy change. Do you, as a former school board member, feel that those comments that the public could bring forward are meaningful, that they could sway this school board one way or another at this point, given kind of their already sort of known positions on some of these topics?
For those known positions, no. For people uh, who are keeping an open mind, which I think is very few of the majority of the board, uh, it's not going to make that big a difference. I think raising some issues, public comment is always important to me because I try to make sure that I have an open mind and that I listen and understand different perspectives. Uh, you can't do that if you already made up your mind. And the workshop, I think, is where you make the biggest impact because once they've come out of workshop and made a decision, once they get to July 1st meeting, you're not going to be able to sway it too much. They've
Mhm.
already locked in those positions.
Yasmina, do you plan to be at those meetings? And what is it that you want to say?
I plan to reiterate that diversity, equity, inclusion is important. We need bold school board members who want to do the right thing for all children. We don't need comfortability right now. We need courage. And I want to encourage anyone who is able to attend the policy agenda meeting on Wednesday to show up, and anyone who can attend the July 1st board meeting. We need more parents and more people involved, taxpayers, stakeholders, whoever, to get involved in public education. And the only way to know how that works is to listen to these meetings when they're recorded live, show up in person, and use your voice. That is the most powerful thing right now, is to use your voice. And the only thing that is more powerful than money is people power. And we need people to show up and share their concerns. And whether we can sway them differently, or they change a word that could mean the same thing, even though I like the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's still a win because we are still incorporating that need for justice for all of our children.
Well, Yasmina White, Warren Jones, Geanny Joseph, Ruiz, thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.